In Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky is describing a difficult and painful situation on the front lines as Ukrainian forces battle Russian troops in the Donbass. Mr. Zelensky specifically mentioned the city of Bakhmut, which has been the scene of fierce fighting. He's also urging all Ukrainians to stay vigilant and be prepared for any possible Russian attacks or provocations. CNN's Matthew Chance has been covering Russia's war from Ukraine since it began, and he's got the footage to show it. He looks back on his experiences in Europe's biggest conflict since World War II.
When the invasion first began, I was standing on top of the roof of a hotel in the center of Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, basically on television, having a conversation with a bunch of colleagues about how it was unlikely that Vladimir Putin, even though he had built up tens of thousands of forces on the borders of Ukraine to the east, how unlikely it was that he was going to take that step, cross the Rubicon and launch a full-scale invasion. It's on the hands of the Ukrainians who resist. Oh, I tell you what, I just heard a big bang right here behind me. And it was a really shocking experience because, you know, not only was I having to report on the bombardment of Kiev, but I also had to radically recalculate what was going on, what was happening in this country that I've been covering for so many years. Oh,
there's another one.
I've got a flak jacket right here. Let me just get it on. Those first hours after the invasion were pretty frenetic. We didn't know what was really going on. There were all sorts of reports about Russian paratroopers moving into positions around the city. There was one particularly worrying report that airborne Russian special forces had moved into an airbase north of the Ukrainian capital in an area called Gostomel. It was the Antonov airbase. These troops you can see over here, they are Russian airborne forces. I started chatting to that commander, and in the conversation I said to him, so, look, give me an idea of what we're seeing here. Where are the Russians? I said, and he said to me, what do you mean? He looked really confused. He said, what do you mean? Where are the Russians? And I said, well, I'm going to go live in a minute on CNN. I want to tell people where the Russian forces have got to. And he looked at me and he said, we're the Russians. We're the Russians. And at that point, we suddenly realized that we had come face to face. We'd crossed the front line inadvertently. And so it just shows us now for the first time just how close Russian forces have got towards the center of the Ukrainian capital. I think what was most amazing, most surprising, I suppose, about those first few days was the level of resistance that we saw and that we witnessed by ordinary Ukrainians, as well as the Ukrainian military, of course, but we saw ordinary Ukrainian people pick up weapons, defend their streets, their buildings, their yards.
I didn't think I would join this unit just 2 days ago. I thought that, I don't know how to handle guns.
And I remember looking down and they had a crate full of petrol bombs. Bottles full of gasoline with rags in the top that they were going to throw at Russian forces as they came. And I asked one of the guys there, I said, did you make these? They're like, no, we didn't make them. It's the old women in the apartment blocks that are making them and then delivering them to us. And it just really rammed home what a multi-layered sort of defense that the Russians were confronting. If they thought they were going to walk into the Ukrainian capital and take it over without a fight, I mean, what a massive miscalculation that was. Within a couple of days of the invasion, we traveled to just a short distance from the capital, a bridge where there'd been a battle just an hour or two before we got there. Right within the past few hours, there has been a ferocious battle here on the outskirts of Kiev. And this is one of those Russian Soviet-era vehicles which is completely burned out. You can see this is a bridge, actually, is an access point to the northwest of Kiev, the Ukrainian capital. And the Russian column that has come down here has been absolutely hammered. So that was a very, very disturbing moment in the conflict. But it was also very profound in the sense that it just showed that Russia's calculation of sending a light armoured columns into Ukraine to take the capital, to decapitate the Ukrainian government, was not working. And it was not just not working, but it was devastating to the Russian armed forces. I think one of the most incredible aspects of this conflict so far has been the dramatic transformation of Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, from an actor and comedian turned politician to president turned, iconic war leader. I managed to speak to him. I was one of the first journalists to speak to him in his bunker in central Kiev.
And it's very important for people in the United States to understand that despite the fact that the war is taking place in Ukraine, it's essentially for values in life, for democracy, for freedom. Therefore, this war is for all the world. And that message should be sent far and wide, from Ukraine to people in the United States, so they understand what it is like for us here, what we're fighting for, and why support for Ukraine matters.
And it's incredible that Zelensky, from very early on, knew that he had to make this war much broader in its impact. It wasn't just, it couldn't just be a war that Ukraine was fighting. It had to be a war that the rest of the world, or at least the rest of the West, was invested in. I think 2022 will be remembered as the year that Russia hurled itself into the abyss, or was hurled into the abyss by Vladimir Putin and his extraordinary war in Ukraine. Not only is the country facing a potentially devastating military defeat with tens of thousands of dead, if not more, but also it's facing economic catastrophe.